Whoops. Oh, I hit the wrong thing. Oh. So folks, um, folks, if I can have your attention, rather than taking a question report, we're just going to go through the three questions because we don't want to disrupt the conversations. So if you can start to think about question number 2, which is on the screen, then we'll put up question number 3 in a few minutes, and then we'll do a little bit of a wrap up at the end. There you go. question is question number 3. We'll give you about 5 minutes, and then we'll talk. Okay, folks, I think what we're going to do is we're just going to take about 10 to 12 minutes so we get you out of here on time to go around the room and just ask folks to share their thoughts on all the questions, any of the 3 questions that you want to provide some insights on. So who would like to start? You can do it at your table if you want. Is there a mic at your table? Is that one on, the middle one?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So, we talked about a lot of stuff, the first being, the process by which this happens and moving it beyond kind of the enlightened community that we are in this room to the day-to-day business operations. And, you certainly have to start with a connection between the business purpose and the social responsibility purpose, and to make those connections, and they'll be different for different audiences. So, the example that we talked about this morning of stock performance of companies that are socially responsible versus those that are not is a starting point. But then beyond that, you can get into the example of Lilly, which is to, instead of 1.5 billion people in the world having access to the drugs, going to 3 billion. But then you get into some tricky water, like with PepsiCo, if you want to sell more product, are you now selling it to children? And, is it going to do more harm than good? So, and then the variety of different metrics and different ways of developing the business case and getting more and more people involved. And, it was pointed out that corporate boards now are really bringing in these kind of people into the boards as opposed to the traditional finance people who are just, quarter by quarter examiners of bottom lines. And not only that, but they're also making the business case to the shareholders that in the long term, sustainability is something that you want, which brings in the issue of time horizon. So if profit and if revenue and profitability is what you want, is it really quarter by quarter that you're looking at that, or is that a 3 to 5 or 10-year model that you want to convince people that's going to be more workable, more sustainable for the business? The challenges that we have are numerous. This is a complicated idea, and you really have to be very creative in kind of creating the elevator speech and then getting people's attention for the next half hour, especially when their objectives, their MBOs, have nothing to do with this. The point that Dr. Khan made, which is, tell me what's important to you by showing me your MBOs for the year. And then, I'll figure out, whether you're in line with this. And also the budgets and the investment that the organization makes into these kinds of initiatives versus their day-to-day business. A lot of discussion about the evidence and the metrics that are needed and variability around that, depending upon who the constituency is and the audience and the stakeholder community. But I think in general, we agree that there ought to be a combination of business metrics aligned with social responsibility or public health metrics, that somehow they need to be set side by side next to each other so that if one moves, the other moves as well. You can make that kind of connection. Anything else that people would like to add?
Well said. Thank you.
We talked a little bit about metrics in our group, so I'm going to put my eyes on this crowd and see if someone wants to talk.
I am not in synthesis mode, but I will do my best. How do I turn this? Yeah, so on the issue of measurement, a couple of things that we talked about included the importance of not being swayed just by outcomes, but by process, because if we can get to an understanding of what are the answers to the first question, what are the successful elements doing this, we need to be tracking whether or not those elements are in place. So kind of valuing process alongside measurement. And then we talked, I think, somewhat similarly about having a measurement system in place that allows you to report out in different ways to different audiences and having it be able to be compelling for those. And then there were a few measures we actually talked about, such as if this is so embedded in the company's culture that it's a part of the regular annual corporate reporting, and it's not a different thing, it's not a subset, it's not an appendix, it's just part of the usual, and that's kind of a process measure in some ways.
And Bridget, I thought you raised a good point about when you select the metrics, you're making a judgment about who's important to you, which stakeholders are important to you, to the conversation earlier. And that can be a risky proposition. That could work in your favor, that could work against you. So that's something to think about as well.
Did I miss anything?
Anything else from?
Oh, we also talked about the importance of not just thinking about metrics as quantitative things, but also as measures. Yeah, so it's not just metrics, but measures.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Thanks, team. This goes back to our discussion in the first question, which is that it's clear that there's a concern here about making sure that everyone has a common understanding of what we're talking about. And we realized we were saying shared language, but actually what we meant was shared understanding, because the potential for having people be thinking shared value means one thing to one group participating, when in fact it means a completely different thing to another group. And you have to do that right at the beginning, because you don't want to realize in year 5 that you've been talking about different things the whole time.
Yeah.
And that will then underlie that the process is right, the measures are right, everything will follow from that common understanding.
And we also talked a little bit about barriers in terms of the need for a mindset shift and how challenging that could be. I don't know if that's a 2-person group in the back. If you I don't know if you want to share your thoughts. It's entirely up to you. Okay, all right, that's fine. What about this group? Yeah, I was going to say all the brilliance is in the back of the room. What about this group right here?
Okay. I think I would like to say what Ron said and what Bridget said.
We're done.
I don't think it's fair to go after the experts have gone. But so for question 1, we talked about, and some of this is temporal as you're getting into the space of shared value. Having senior leadership, the sincerity of the endeavor is important. Having an internal champion, but then evolving to internalizing that into the culture of the organization, so it's not dependent on a single position or a single person. Then the reality of the community engagement and how you really do that. And anyone who's done international work knows it's tricky to ask communities what they want and to get an answer. First of all, the answer you want to hear, or the answer they gave you may not be the answer you want to hear. So that the values really have the potential to be shared. Partners, seeking partners that you may need that have complementary skill sets to leverage the value. And then we talked about the metrics and the sustainability, actually under question 1, but how that, that's going to vary according to the level of society you're looking at. Is this globally so much water was saved, or is it at the individual person or the household level? Spatially and temporally, there's going to be a lot of differences, and those differences may be between the company and between who they're working with, their clients are. Number 2, barriers to creating shared value was skepticism, both internal and external. So we had a long talk about that. I don't think I'm going to expand on that due to the time, but I think everybody remembers that. I thought just failure. If a company gets brave and sort of sticks their nose into this space, and then because it is hard and they fail, it's going to be hard for them to convince the company to go back into that space and try again. And then if they're not really aligned with the core business. So I really like the comment about not having 2 separate sort of groups in the organization. We talked about evidence how really it is, again, all the things that you said, like where do you collect that evidence from? And then my question is something we talked about for a while, is like how much value counts? I mean, how much value is acceptable on either side? So do you need this much value to keep that running in your corporation? Does the community need this much value to accept that intervention or product? So I think how much value is another question.
Yeah, that's similar to, I think Kimberly made the point in our group of how much evidence do you need? So it's along the same lines.
Where's the benchmark?
Yeah.
Right. what is the current state if, of, you know, like doing a clinical study. Anyone else want to, from the group, please top that off?
Okay. Okay, great.
Along the vein of internal skepticism, I just wanted to add something so that it will be on the record, which was we did raise the issue about how there are sometimes some business units that might be left out of the process early on, and we talked about legal.
yes.
And that, because that came up as a barrier, which is that, you know, you might have this great idea, but then you run into the barrier of the legal unit saying, well, we can't do that because of regulatory issues or compliance issues, and that a solution to that might be to think of them as embedded partners who are part of the offense instead of part of the defense.
Yeah, thanks for raising that. I was saying that I was actually surprised that the legal and compliance constraints have not come up as an issue yet in the discussion that we had today, and yet I know for my experience has been that as I try to talk about and drive shared value within my organization, that's one of the biggest barriers I bang into is legal and compliance saying, wait a minute, this is social, this is business. You know, the two shall never meet. That's a little bit of an exaggeration, but it's close. So this whole idea of, you know, how do you engage your legal and your compliance folks at the outset and make them a partner in this rather than going to them sort of after the fact, and then try to win them over. So
It
that's,
should be part of your internal ecosystem.
yes, there you go. Okay. Well, I want to, in the interest of getting everyone out on time, I want to thank, for those of you who hung in here till 5 o'clock, thank you very much. I think it was a great day. We had some great speakers, and then just to remind you, we're starting at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning, and Dr. Victor Zhao will kick us off. So thanks to everyone, and hopefully we'll see you tomorrow.